Well, I think it's very disruptive. You know, you're used to a set way, certain times you can do things, and certain places you can do things, and all of a sudden that's challenged because of the virus. And, you know, all of a sudden all the testing going on and making sure the kids are safe and making sure they're going through their protocol. So there's an extra burden put on them as far as making sure not just regarding their football knowledge, but making sure they understand exactly how to take care of themselves safely with the health requirements, and then making sure that keeping them busy most of the day. I think that was the biggest problem I saw when they let the kids come back to college. You know, the NCAA didn't let the coaches get with them. You know, so again, you know, the kids lifted weights a couple hours a day, but the rest of the day, you know, you had to control them, and they should have been allowed in meetings and stuff of that sort to keep their day going. And you know, there's just too many free hours around. That's why a lot of those schools spiked. I thought in the virus, you know, yeah, the best test could have been to keep the coaches involved with them because you know the key to good programs comes down to with the virus is accountability and responsibility, and the kids understand what they have to do to play. It's a different year. It's understanding that hey, it's important not just for you but for your teammates that everybody follows protocol and everybody's on the same page.
As a coach, how tough is it for you? I mean, we're on week, I guess technically week 3 of the season. How tough would it be for you as a coach to try to game plan and prepare and practice plan when A, you don't know if certain kids will be available each week, and then B, you don't know if your opponent's going to be ready. How tough is that from a coaching perspective to get all that stuff planned out?
Well, I've always said in college that I think you're only as good as your second team because I think because of injuries, so that happened, you know, just in practice and in games that the next man up has always been my philosophy as far as making sure your second group, your third groups are ready to play and they understand the game plan. That's why anytime I had a chance to play a lot of players, I never liked to run a score up. I always thought when the game was out of hand and we had won the game, I was going to basically play a lot of players so they had that experience on the field. And I think that's how they get better. But I think the big thing is with all this going on right now, I'm just happy to see college football being played. And, you know, I think it's gotten too political in some states. And, you know, I don't think that's what the game should be about. I think if they've proven they can play safely and keep the problems down as far as the health is concerned, I think it's an enjoyment that both the players, the coaches, the fan base, everybody enjoys. And again, I think it's something that everybody should have a chance to play and not just be locked down by certain states because of political awareness or whatever they're trying to do.
Coach, in this strange year, some games are going to be played in front of smaller crowds than usual, and in some cases, no crowds at all. And we often hear of coaches pumping in sound during practice to prep teams for tough environments. How does having no fans going to affect it?
I always said that, you know, it's like when you play away games that, you know, certain stadiums, the crowd's going to get into it. Other stadiums, you don't hear any noise at all. So you got to come ready to play. And that's up to each individual self. It's up to the coach to get the team ready to play. And you know, as when I watch the games now, I don't even put it on the voice anymore. I put it on mute, so I'm like watching game film. I like watching it that way. And you know, I think the biggest thing I look at with football today is that, you know, for some kids it's probably like going to practice because there's nobody around. But you know, the key is that, you know, it's the coach's job to get them ready to understand that they're playing another opponent, and you know it's what they're doing on the field that's important, not what's in the stands.
Well, the NCAA has granted everyone an extra year of eligibility this year. So without having to worry about red shirts and how you would handle playing time, you as a coach, would you be more inclined to play younger guys more in a season like this?
If they're ready to play, you know, I always looked at a certain deal that if a kid was ready to play, you never wanted to put him out there and have him not ready to play where he could be embarrassed or you could be embarrassed to put them out there. And I think right now with that extra year of eligibility, I think you'll take more of a chance to put a kid out there, especially when a game is out of hand one way or the other. that you want to see some of these young kids, because nothing beats experience and putting a kid on the field. You can talk all you want and watch it from the sideline, but the game itself, you got to go out there and play it to get better at it. And that's what I think is important. That's why you hardly ever see a lot of freshmen and sophomores rising too much. You see some, but it's mostly the juniors and seniors that are carrying the team.
Coach, what about scheduling? Obviously, there's a lot of talk from UCF standpoint. Only 8 conference games, and then 1 non-conference. I know there was some talk about trying to get additional games, and it didn't work out for whatever reason. I know you spent time in the athletic director chair at UCF. How aggressive would you have been, or how aggressive do you think UCF should have been in trying to secure other games this season? With the sort of wide open scheduling that was going on.
Well, I'm sure Danny White, who I have a lot of respect for, tried to get games, but I think when these other conferences just like went to conference only play, I thought you're very limited who you can play. And I don't think he was going to bring somebody in and give him a whole bunch of money with nobody in the stands. I mean, that was the problem. But I do think not playing a 12-game schedule is going to hurt them at the end, because they got to pick up some games that because people are going to look at a full schedule rather than just a 9-game schedule as far as when it comes down to playoffs and all that type thing. I think the key is with the 9-game schedule, they got to win the conference, so they're assured of going to a good bowl and a possible playoff berth. Otherwise, you limit yourself without playing a full schedule. I know Danny tried to get games. I'm sure he did. And it comes down to sometimes finances, and sometimes people aren't available because of what the conferences did.
How about from a coaching standpoint? We saw a really unique situation this week where Houston and Baylor struck a game on Saturday to be played this Saturday. So really a 7-day notice. I mean, Coach, that sometimes games are scheduled 7 years in advance, and Baylor and Houston pulled one off in 7 days. How would that impact you as a coach, kind of the topsy-turvy scheduling and throwing games on kind of last minute?
Well, what it does is what messes up with you is a little bit is giving the players time off. Because if I knew I wasn't going to play a game, I'd usually give them a Monday and Tuesday, possibly a Wednesday off, as far as to get their legs underneath them. But I think right now they were fortunate they had an open date a little later on in the season, so Houston and Baylor can match up again. But it is disruptive. But the coach got to use his time with his players to, one is keep them healthy and meanwhile keep them sharp as far as the game is concerned. But I think the key is that making sure you end up playing the game, that's not canceled altogether.
What do you think this does to recruiting, right? So we've seen this a bunch. Obviously, the transfer portal is a brand new phenomenon, but we're seeing kids now who decided initially maybe to leave home and get further away, and now family obligations are bringing them back. Recruiting's a lot different. Kids can't come on campus. You're doing these virtual recruitings and whatnot. What do you think sort of the state of 2020 in the future holds for recruiting and transfers, and how would you sort of approach it as a coach, dealing with everything else that's going on right now?
You turn the coaches all into politicians now, without having to bring the kids on campus. But I think the key is that you got to have a good relationship, and you got to be good in communication on the phone and on virtuals when you're talking to kids as far as how things are doing. And most of the schools that recruit well, the kid's been on campus already by the time he's going into his senior year. If he hasn't been, there's a pretty good chance they're not that much involved with it. But most of the kids that schools end up recruiting, a lot of them have been on the campus already. What they're missing is the game day activity. That's the thing that's going to hurt them. But as far as the school itself, the facilities, the coaching staff, they're all familiar with those guys, and they understand what they're getting into. The thing they're missing, though, is getting to a game day scenario where they see the action, hear the crowd, see what's going on in a game day situation, which a lot of kids, especially today, they have a big interest in that.
Do you think that gives schools like a UCF a sort of a leg up, being able to say, hey, the local kids in Orlando know what the experience is like? Does that allow some schools to maybe keep some kids closer to home that maybe previously would have considered to go elsewhere, you think?
I think the good football states in the country, that the schools are in those states, Texas, Florida, Georgia, I think they're going to have an edge up because of the familiarity with the programs and also the distance. I think there's no question in my mind about that, where before they'd be in California, all over the place recruiting. It's just those obviously kids haven't been on campus yet, but the local kids and the kids are within the state. And if it's a good football state, which the three I mentioned are good football states, high school football, the kids know about the program. They've been on campus, and you have a better chance of recruiting that type of kid. Plus, his parents have been probably on campus, which I think is critical.
Coach, we're kicking off the season this year with Georgia Tech. You were the head coach at Georgia Tech when we played them the first 3 times back in 1996, 99, 2000. Those games, 2 of those games were close games, 1-score matchups. What do you remember about any of those games?
I know one game we were losing. I think it was 17-7 or something. A couple minutes left, and we got lucky. George Gossett completed a couple of passes for touchdowns, and we ended up winning the game. But in fact, I always kid around with Dante Culpepper when I was at Minnesota Vikings. He said, "I remember playing you guys." I said that last time I remember seeing you, Dante, you were looking at the sky. They were carrying you off the field at Georgia Tech. The other kid came in, Vic Penn, I think it was, came in and did a heck of a job, and kept completing the short routes, the passes, and really did a good job. I told Vic that later on when I was at UCF that he's a son of a gun because he got rid of the ball quick and he knew where he was going with the ball, and that was a great game. But we were lucky to win that one. We really were. I remember that one.
Yeah, that was the 2000 game. You're right, 2 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter. The 99 game, you guys beat us up pretty good. It was 41-10. We had Joe Hamilton running around on it.
Yeah, well, he beat up a lot of people. I don't think he was quite a player. He really was. Plus, we at that time we had players. Recruiting was going on pretty good, and we had players in the program, and we did some really good things in all phases: offense, defense, and the kicking game.
So, Coach, week 1, Georgia Tech went on the road and beat a Florida State team. I know you still have really good connections with Georgia Tech, right? 2 of your former coaches, at least 2 of your former coaches, Jeff Collins and Brent Key, still on that staff. What did you make of Georgia Tech week 1 going on the road and beating Florida State?
Well, I watched the game on TV, and I thought they came out and I thought they played very well. They didn't play the speed of the game early, but then they caught up and they ended up doing exactly. They never panicked. They stayed with the game plan, and I was really impressed with their young quarterback. I think for a true freshman, he's going to have quite a future. I think he made some mistakes thrown into coverage, but that's going to happen with freshmen. But I think other than that, then I was pleased with his poise and how he handled himself. He can hurt you with his arm or his feet. And I thought defensively they improved. There's no question they're a better team than they were last year from a size standpoint and a strength standpoint. That's what I saw watching the game. And it was a good game. I thought they hung in there. It was a great win for Jeff. I texted him and told him I was very proud of him, and it was a great win and good team win and stuff. And I have about 5 or 6 coaches on that staff at Georgia Tech that either played for me or worked with me. So there's a bunch up there. I'm anxious to get up and see the game this weekend.
Well, obviously, you know what UCF does on offense. We spread you out. We're fast. We have a lot of athletes. What do you think UCF needs to do to beat Georgia Tech based on what you saw Georgia Tech do defensively?
Well, I think UCF has more talent than Georgia Tech as far as skill talent. As far as the receiver, running back situation there. And I think Josh has done a great job as far as utilizing the offense. And I think basically Randy's done a good job with the defense. And I think the key is going to be basically, 2 things, eliminating penalties, and turnovers. That's the key. And I think the speed of UCF, I think, has to be looked at from a Georgia Tech standpoint and how the matchups are. That's what I always look at the matchups as far as you can match up with maybe 1 or 2 guys. Can you match up with 3 or 4 of them when they have 4 wides out there and just where they're going to go the right guy and stuff with the matchups? Because I always look at where's the problem, where's the weakness, and I think that Josh has done a good job of getting the ball into his playmakers' hands. And I think he'll continue to try to do that against Georgia Tech. But I'm looking for a good football game. Everybody keeps asking me who I'm rooting for. I just want